The Prepper Podcast, Episode 2.
We've got to know whether or not they're presidents of crime.
The American people would never vote for socialism. He said, under the name of liberalism, the American people will adopt every fragment of the socialist program.
Hey everybody, this is Ken Jensen again, and this is the second episode of the Prepper Podcast. And today's podcast is over the top natural or extreme disasters or hazards and the priority that you should place on your preparations. So I'm going to cover those disasters and how likely they are to occur and why you should prioritize your preps to account for how available those disasters are, how likely they are. Now, I try to follow the motto, when prepping for disasters, we choose the mundane over the insane. This kind of follows what's called the disaster multiplier, which is a simple concept that disasters that are smaller are usually going to happen with more frequency, or they're going to happen more often than disasters that have more of a global impact. Anybody would agree with me, I assume, that job loss happens every single day. Muggings and attacks and break-ins happen every single day. Fires and floods, these things happen every single day. But you don't think about nuclear disasters as happening every day, or biological warfare, supervolcanoes, or freaking black holes. People that prepare for these larger things are typically letting themselves get carried away and get into very expensive preps, and some of them may not be ready for the most mundane of preps. So today, that's what we're discussing. We want to be prepared for the most mundane of preparation, or for the most mundane of disasters. Things that hit us on a personal level, not things that are global. But there is a saving grace here. When we prepare for things that are very likely for us personally, let's say that you are preparing right now for a tornado to hit your home. Well, if you are preparing for a tornado to hit your home, there's a good chance that you're going to be ready for at least an economic collapse for some amount of time. So the idea is that as you're preparing for these smaller, more localized disasters, you are actually preparing for the bigger things, but you're not running into the risk of allowing your preps to run you instead of you running your preps. Okay? You're supposed to prep so that life is more abundant. You're not supposed to be prepping so that you waste all your time on preps. That's counterintuitive. You want life to be good, whether your times are good or bad. All right? So you need to think about that. You don't want to let your preps run and thereby ruin your life. Never on your deathbed are you going to go back and think, man, I wished I had bigger and better preps. You're going to wish that you had more time with your family, that you did things better. But I'm going to bet that you are like me. As long as some disaster never hit, you're going to wish that you spent more time with your family. And you're going to wish that you did more things as a family. You're not going to wish that you spent more time in a bunker storing away your food. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a time and a place to have a little bunker. There's a time and a place for a hideout. I mean, we have a storm shelter that we doubled up into a bunker. And it's also being used as a root cellar. And it's also being used for water storage. So we have those things. But what I'm trying to say is let's think about the smaller things first. If you're not ready for the smaller things, then trying to get ready for the big things, those aren't going to do you any good, because you can have a bunker all day long, but if you don't have food and water, you're dead. And that goes against the first rule of survival. Don't die. Okay, so let's go through the list of disasters and how I think they are most likely to occur. The number one most likely scenarios are job loss, loss of a breadwinner, and loss of a family member. Okay, so every time that there's a job loss, and as morbid as it sounds, you have to think about the loss of the person who makes the money. That would be me. You lose a job, you got to make money. You lose a job, you got to eat. You lose a job, you got to drink. So first thing to do is store up a little bit of food. Next thing to do, store up a little bit of cash. You need several months of cash so that you can cover your bills. And I'll let you know that I did follow this. And in 2008, when the economy took a dump, I went through my savings and it saved us. All right, I had those savings. Now I have to work on getting those savings back. And believe me, I am trying to work on it. But in 2008, we did not lose our home. We did not lose our lives. We lived healthy. We did pinch some pennies, but we made it through. A lot of people didn't make it through because they weren't ready for something of that magnitude personally. It seems like such a small thing when you think of it on a global scale, but to that one person, that is a disaster. Now, we're going to move it on to mugging. This is number 2 of my list: mugging, attacks, and break-ins. All right, so you are more likely to have a job loss than someone to break into your home. More likely to have a job loss than a mugging. But that doesn't mean that muggings, attacks, and break-ins don't happen to people. All right, so in this, you want some self-defense. You want to understand some small amount of psychology. With the break-ins, you want defense mechanisms on your home. There's one big defense mechanism is just to have an alarm. The other one would be to have a couple shotguns in your house. I'll tell you right now, you break into my house and you're going to be eating lead probably, because in my state there is a castle rule. So you don't break into my house because I have the right to defend my home. I do not want to hurt anyone, but you break into my home and you put my family at risk, you're going to put your life at risk. So there's pretty cool little plastic screens that you put in on your windows. They're not transparent, they're opaque, but it lets most of the light in still. But it also keeps the window, it almost turns it into like a shatterproof window. So after that, number 3 is fire or flood. I mean, your home can burn down or flood at any time. That can happen. I mean, there are people who have been stuck in snowstorms when it's not supposed to snow around this time of the year. Well, it did, and you weren't ready. So think about fire, floods, snow-ins, stuff like that. Well, more specifically with the fire and flood, I mean, this is a time that you're going to try to get out of your home. So it's probably best that you keep important documents and things like that in a reasonable place where you can quickly acquire them and get out. Because if you have a lockable fire safe box right beside your door, then there's a very good possibility that you're going to grab it on your way out the door and take it out with you. So if your home burns down, your important documents are there. And you know, the same thing could happen with your personal effects, things that have sentimental value. It's always good to go over an action plan. I mean, if there's a fire alarm that goes on in your house, and if you don't have one, you better get a fire alarm. All right, I agree with any type of alarm. I mean, we should not rely on them to work 100% of the time, but you should always have something that's going to benefit you. It really doesn't make sense not to have fire alarms in your home. And it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but up until now, up until just a little while back when we had some issues with our water heater, I fixed it. But the thing is it was creating carbon monoxide, and we didn't have a carbon monoxide detector. Why didn't I have a carbon monoxide detector right beside my water heater? I have it now because hindsight's 20/20, but I didn't have it before. And that's something I should have thought about. So, number 4 would be loss of local water supply. So, we don't have as big a problem here in my hometown. Our water supply gets tapped into a natural spring. So we have a natural spring feeding our water supply, which makes it one of the best in the U.S. However, there are cities all throughout the country that are pulling water supply, pulling all their water supplies from a lake or from the sea, things like that. They can, dead animals can be found in rivers and in lakes. All kinds of fecal matter. Fish end up pooping all throughout the water and stuff. So in that, you end up with an occasional bacterial or viral problem in your water supply. So they will advise a boil water advisory, and now everybody's got to boil their water. If that happens here, it's not very likely because we're from a underground spring. But if that happens here, we have water stored back. And what if they cut off the water for some reason? What if a main bursts and it's going to be 3 weeks for some unknown reason? And I work in industry, so I know that sometimes the lead time on a part can be 3 or 4 weeks. Now, what if they can't jerry-rig it to make it work and you're out of water for a month? Well, you're going to wish that you had a water supply on hand before that crisis happened. So we have that water supply on hand. I don't know really how long. I think we'll make it probably a few weeks. And we're constantly building that water supply, but we have it. We had the water supply. So number 5 is tornadoes, hurricanes, volcanic eruptions, large-scale fires, winter storms, earthquakes. This is more, this is still, other than hurricanes, volcanic eruptions, these are more of a local or a small regional, I guess you could call it regional, disasters. So these are local or regional disasters that affect multiple people. All right, so we know that tornadoes are hurricanes. We know that wildfires and winter storms are things that happen every day. Earthquakes happen every day, but here in the U.S., we typically don't see them, so we don't think that they'll ever happen to us. But the fact of the matter is they will. So you got to prepare for these things. So you need to understand when one of these things happens, where you're going to go, what you're going to do, who's going to grab what supplies you're going to need. You could be out for a couple days, you could be out for a week, you could be out for a month. You won't have power. Your house could get demolished. And if you know about these things ahead of time, there is the scenario to bug out. You can get out of the area. And your bug out location could just be going to a hotel. Let's say that I'm in West Tennessee. I could bug out in a hotel in Chattanooga or something. You know, that's only that's several hours away. And I assume that if there's a wild outbreak of tornadoes and stuff that's going to be ripping through my area, but it's not going to be in that area at all, then I can go over there and just hang out and have a nice family vacation while my house is getting destroyed. Or not. Hopefully not. I'd hate to deal with the after fact. But that's us bugging out and getting out of Dodge, basically. So with that, I have a bag, my wife has a bag, and my children know how to throw things in their bags. We're working on getting them some bug out bags set up. But basically, we'll have the basic supplies we need to survive for, a few days while we wait it out. Same goes with hurricanes, volcanic eruptions. Just get out if you have, forward notice. If you don't have notice and you decide you need to hunker down, well, it'll be nice that you have the supplies on hand, like the food and the water and backup power systems. All of this stuff I'll talk about at a later time, but it'll be nice to have that kind of equipment. So number 6 would be an economic collapse or a nationwide food shortage. With the climbing debt and actually over the last month, the fact that the debt has been 100% stagnant, and we know that our debt is not stagnant. Our debt is only going to go up if we're paying our bills. So if our debt is stagnant, that means one of two things. Either we're not paying our bills, or we are printing so much money to pay our debts that our debt is just completely stagnant. Or the third one is they're lying. Our debt is not stagnant. It is much higher than it's showing on the National Debt Clock website. I'm going to opt for the fact they're probably lying about something. And but even looking at the old number, our debt is so high and it's climbed so far that there's no going back. So it's understandable that they will either have some kind of collapse, be it major or minor, and that there could possibly be a money redefinement. They could redefine the dollar, and that's going to kick a lot of people. So, for that, you could have backups and like metals and you could have some reserve cash. It's really good to have reserve cash. I really don't think that having reserve cash is a bad thing. But if you've already got your reserve cash fund, then you might want to look into some precious metals like silver and gold. That's something to look into. We have silver, we don't have gold. Would I like gold? Yep. Can I afford gold? Nope. So, we do silver. Food shortage. We know how our land is being used in the U.S. We have so much natural availability of everything, but we're destroying our land. We've created deserts. So, we really need to start using our land better. But if we're not going to use our land better, then we need to prepare for a food shortage. So, we've got some food stocked away in multiple places in our home, just trying to be ready if something happens. If you go back to the Great Depression, people that were in the Great Depression back in the day, and that's not even as bad as what I think it could get. People that were in the Great Depression were hiding canned food into their coffee tables. They had cubby holes underneath their coffee tables, and they had canned food hidden there because they wanted to be able to go in and get food from anywhere, and they didn't want military reappropriation of their canned food. So number 7, viral or bacterial pandemic. All right, now let's think about the Dark Ages. Let's think about the Black Plague. Let's think about stuff like that. Has that happened in the past? Yes, it has. That stuff has happened before, and it can happen again. Yes, we have a much, much higher scientific knowledge of medicine, but the thing is every single year a new strain of flu comes out, and we may or may not catch it. A new strain of different bacteria and viruses come out, and we're not ready to deal with it. Fortunately, our bodies do mostly take care of it, and we do get it under control. We take general antibiotics for almost anything nowadays. You know, oh, you got a red puffy eye? Well, just in case, let's take some antibiotics. Oh, you got a little red puffy spot on your arm? Well, just in case that's some kind of disease, let's go ahead and give you general antibiotics, which don't even cover the wide spectrum of things. I mean, they call them wide spectrum antibiotics, but they don't cover as much as what they think they do. And all we're doing is we're putting so much of these antibiotics out there that eventually these variations of these different diseases are going to catch, and they're going to adapt, they're going to change, and our antibiotics are going to be no good. So then where are we left? So the chance of a viral or bacterial pandemic is a possibility. And if that's the case, I would be a really stupid, I would be very unintelligent if I was to not tell people to stay in their homes. You know, I would definitely be doing a disservice to the people of my country if I told them to go out and buy groceries and do all this. So the government, that's what they're going to do. They're going to tell people that there's a 100% curfew. They're going to stay in their homes until they can get this under control. They're going to quarantine people into their homes. That's what's going to happen. If that happens, are you prepared to stay in your home for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks? All right. Is that a very likely scenario? Not as likely as some of the other stuff, but like I said, if you're preparing for the job loss or the break-ins or the fire, floods, the loss of supplies, the tornadoes, and you have all this food and water stored up, you're going to be much better than everybody else. And if you have it, well, you're either going to go to a hospital or you're going to be the guy that decides he wants to wait it out in your own home, and you're not going to get anybody else sick because you've got all the food and water there at your home, and if you're gone, but nobody else is. It's a sad thing to think about, but staying in your home is a big possibility when one of these pandemics hit. Number 8 is a nuclear disaster, chemical or biological warfare. Now, being in the military in the past, I know that chemical and biological warfare is a possibility. We did prepare for chemical and biological warfare, but I've never been in it. We prepared for it over and over and over, had gas masks. We had, we did drills where we had to get the gas mask on right away or else we were dead and things like that. I mean, they took us into a chamber. We had to take the gas mask off, and they gassed us with tear gas just so that we would understand that the gas masks are going to save our lives. All right, so chemical and biological warfare, it is a possibility. Do I think it's a very big possibility? I don't even think it's as big a possibility as a viral bacterial pandemic. However, if you think about it, the loss of your water supply, the viral pandemic, and the biological warfare can all be one. There could be things put in your water supply. So like I said, you prepare for one, you start preparing for the other. Nuclear disasters, we know that they happen. One happened in Japan just recently, didn't it? There have been nuclear disasters over time. I mean, I've read files on some of them that I'm not allowed to, say the details of, but there's Chernobyl. There's the Army reactor that had one single rod in the reactor. there are disasters, and they do hurt people. So I would be doing you a disservice if I told you not to be ready for those. But I think that those are the big disasters that should be like the last things that you're going to consider. I think that we're getting into the realm of the possibilities that you're going to end up letting your preps run your life, and I don't think you should do that. Super volcanoes. If a super volcano goes and it wipes out half a country, then you should be able to go for weeks without additional food and things like that. I mean, maybe have a some way to survive a volcano-induced or nuclear-induced winter. But once again, we're in the big things that I don't think you should be spending all your time on. They do have some amount of respect by me. Do I believe that these things can happen? Yes. If they do happen, I'm probably screwed. You're probably screwed. So until I can get to that point on the list, I'm not worrying about it. Impact from space. That's like a meteor hitting Earth, solar flares, a polar reversal of the Earth, and black holes sucking up the galaxy. To be honest with you, I think this kind of stuff is not something that anybody should really prep for. I know people are out there prepping, and I know you guys are going to tell me, well, I prep for this, and I'm going to be ready. And you know what? If a freaking meteor hits the Earth, and it killed dinosaurs much bigger than you and I, and my guess is they were wild dinosaurs, wild dinosaurs. They knew how to get food. They knew how to do things much better than we do. And they didn't destroy the Earth as much as we do. And they couldn't handle a meteor. Yeah, they were stupid. And yeah, we come up with inventions that overcome things. But I don't think bugging out or going down into your bunker miles into the ground is really going to help you a whole lot. I mean, you may be able to live for a year, but after that, what? You're going to come back up. There's not going to be any plants or any animals or anything, and it's just not something that I personally am going to prepare for. That's something that I will probably just accidentally be prepared for as I'm prepping for these other things first. That's the point I'm trying to get across to everybody. You prepare for the more likely scenarios. The smaller things multiplied, or you take the disaster quality, I guess, the size of the disaster, multiply that by the likelihood of the disaster, and that equals the order that you should prepare for it in. And I think that if you take the size of job loss, multiply it by the likelihood of job loss, it's going to be a much bigger number than if you take the impact from a supervolcano and multiply that by the likelihood of a supervolcanic eruption. So prepare for the smaller, more likely things first, and build your way up to these other things as you're ready. That way you can take it step by step and you don't have to ruin your life by sitting there and just prepping all the time. All right, your family loves you, your wife loves you, your husband loves you. Take it easy. Enjoy life while you're prepping, and make prepping fun for the family. Don't be the crazy person. All right? There's people out there that are making the rest of us look bad. But you know what? Some of them are going to be ready. But some of them aren't, because they think having a bunker is going to save them. And all they got is a bunker full of beans and rice. And you can't live alone on beans and rice. All right? You will be malnutritioned. You will live a while, but you will slowly die of malnutrition. So, let's prepare for the smaller things first. Okay, so on the show notes, I'm gonna have a link on there to my Clever Survivalist blog, and that is the blog post in which I did this podcast from. I have show notes on theprepperpodcast.com. That's theprepperpodcast.com. And once again, in the show notes, there's a link to cleversurvivalist.com on the different types of disasters and priority of survival tips. Okay? Well, I hope you guys, after listening to this, kind of have more of an understanding of the types of things that I'm going to be talking about. And I hope that you really do take heed, take this stuff one step at a time, and start on the small stuff first, because you're, believe me, in a few years, if you're just continually getting your preps together and you're doing it on a small scale, one step at a time, you'll be much further than the guy that runs out, buys a bunch of beans and rice, and sits on it. Alright, you'll be much more prepared. So I hope you guys well, and get your preps going, and start on the small stuff first. This Survival Guy signing out.